I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only
What's
one.
up, everybody? Welcome to my channel.
No one
I'm
likes being
Sunshinery. Make
lied
sure
to.
to subscribe and like this video.
You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now
really cared about you, if they really cared about cast mental health, they wouldn't do that.
That is it. That is the thing. Because if they did support me in the way that every single human being deserves to be supportive, maybe there would have been a world where I would have gone back to the show. Being the other woman is a shameful thing, but it's the thing that happens. And if you can own that and share that and be that for somebody else to relate to on their television screen, that's everything that I want. But I didn't feel supported in the way that I deserve to be supported.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sunshinery, and we are here for a Rachel Goes Rogue podcast, chapter number 31, which is titled, "You Signed Up for This?" ? Now, the show notes say that Rachel and former Love is Blind contestant Jeremy Hartwell address head-on the boundaries for reality stars. Do reality stars deserve the good, the bad, and the ugly? This is going to be an interesting one for sure. And my thing with reality TV is reality TV has been not new, but been progressing since the early 2000s, really. I mean, you can go back a little bit before that, but really since the 2000s. And we are learning now different things and how people were affected because of being on reality TV. And from there, we can make positive changes from what we know now and how people can be affected from being on a show. It's things that you don't know until you have tried it, and then, years go by and you figure it out, kind of a thing. Kind of like how social media and people are affected by that. It's something that we're learning because as social media has come about and grown, and we've all been on it to learn how social media now is affecting people's mental health, what people do with social media, just all of that. It's all a learning lesson, especially when it's something that is new that our world has never had before. We can't make positive choices in positive directions for things until we know the effects of it. So, everybody, let's just buckle up and get ready for this episode. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not done that yet, and make sure your notifications are on. All right, let's listen, guys.
Welcome back to another episode of Rachel Goes Rogue. This is your host, Rachel Savannah Leviss, and I'm very excited to bring on a guest today who is really making waves in this reality TV realm and bringing awareness to the issues that are obvious to all of us at this point. Mental health has been something that hasn't really been discussed with reality TV, and now it's actually in the forefront of everyone's minds. And we're all aware of the problem. Now we have somebody who is working on the solution. So I'm very excited to bring on my friend Jeremy, who created the UKAN Foundation. The UKAN Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for the mental health and legal needs of unscripted reality TV cast members. UKAN was founded by two alumni, Jeremy Hartwell and Nick Thompson, of Netflix popular series Love is Blind, along with clinical psychologist and couples therapist, Dr. Isabel Morley. Jeremy is an executive director, and the UKAN Foundation have successfully helped hundreds of cast members, added dozens of verified therapists and attorneys to its network, and has opened the dialogue on the need for protections for vulnerable cast members who often find themselves exploited for ratings. Today, we're doing something a little bit different since Jeremy is obviously full of knowledge and experience in this world. And I obviously am the host of this podcast, but my producers are here as well to ask questions. And I want to get in on this dialogue too, because we both have experienced a lot when it has come to reality TV and how it has impacted our lives and our thoughts and feelings on it all. So I'm having my producers here and we're going to bring in Jeremy. Welcome, Jeremy Hartwell. I'm very happy to have you here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Now, I want to go over who Jeremy Hartwell is, because some of you might not know him like I didn't know him. I'm not a Love is Blind watcher, but I did hear of his name because he did file a lawsuit against Netflix. And this was done back in 2022, where he had said that they intentionally underpaid the cast, deprived them of food, water, and sleep, piled them with booze, and cutting off their access to personal contacts and most of the outside world. This was all done to make the cast members hungry for social connections and alter their emotions and decision making. Even their contracts required the contestants to agree that if they left the show before filming was done, that they would be penalized and be required to pay $50,000 in liquidated damages, which this is like 50 times more what some of these cast members were even earning during their time on the show. But they did it to instill fear in the cast and enable production to have further control of everything they needed with cast members. And it was finally this year, 2024, May of 2024, that the lawsuit was finally over and Jeremy had won $1 million settlement for the Netflix lawsuit. But see, then when I started to dig deeper into this lawsuit, apparently it was $1.4 million that they had settled on. And that was to be divided between attorneys and approximately 144 former cast and crew members. So it wasn't just Jeremy's money. Jeremy had turned this into a class action lawsuit against Netflix, and then they had to split the money, kind of a thing. It was a very interesting filing to read, and I ended up getting a lot of all of the filings from this lawsuit. So if that is something you guys are interested in wanting to see more of, I would be happy to bring you guys that and show you just like what some of the things happened on this show that they accused Netflix of doing. Not just starvation and all of that. There was even like SA charges brought up, things like that. So let me know down below if that's something you want me to cover. But this is who Jeremy Hartwell is, and this is her guest today on her show. So let's listen to what he has to say about everything going on with Rachel's life.
Yes. The last time I spoke to Jeremy was at the Hollywood and Mind Summit in Los Angeles, and it was very refreshing to see so many people advocating for the rights of cast members. And there was still the need for that discussion to be had around reality TV stars. But I felt like Jeremy and I were there to kind of be that representation and get more knowledge on it and see where we can implement what they were talking about in the entertainment industry and how to apply that into this issue that we're seeing with reality TV stars.
Yeah, I think you guys were definitely popular there. They were very interested in you both and your stories and your perspectives. And that's kind of why we want to have this conversation today. So I'm going to ask some questions and you're going to start out sort of being targeted towards you, Jeremy. And I want more of a conversation between the two of you. Rachel already did a brilliant introduction on what UKAN is, but I'd like to hear from you in your, short form. What is UKAN?
Yeah, and first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show here. I'm really excited to talk to both of you. UKAN is a nonprofit that I founded as at its highest level, it's a cast advocacy group. And I started it basically because when I came out of filming, it was really hard for me to find any support, both from a mental health and a legal perspective, but also just cast community. Obviously, I knew the cast members from my season, and it was great talking to them, but there's literally tens of thousands of reality TV cast members across the past couple of decades. And the ability to reach out to them, to talk to them, to discuss, to share things just wasn't there. So I wanted to start something that like really brought people together and gave them the resources they needed to not just like get back to baseline from before the shows, but to actually succeed and thrive.
Which I totally am for. A union or this group that he has formed where they have a platform to be able to speak about different things that reality stars have gone through, how there's not really any mental health services offered by these production companies for them if they choose or if they want or if they need, kind of a thing. Which, as we learn through time and reality shows getting bigger than they've ever been, just kind of like social media, a lot of people's mental health are affected due to reality TV, what's been happening to them, just like social media, and how people in social media's mental health have been affected by just what they've gone through and different things that happen within the internet and the perspective of how people act. And literally everything that I did read from that Love is Blind filing for the court documents seemed like production was really putting a hold onto these cast members and making them fearful and taking a lot of different privileges away to be able to have that control and get the entertainment value, I guess you could say, that they were looking for. So is it a wonderful thing that he has started this organization, that they've had summits and all of that? Yes. And I won't say that Rachel wasn't affected by being on Vanderpump Rules, but I don't think she is like the poster child of reality stars affected because of TV shows they were on. I hate to say it, but if anything, Ariana has been so vocal when it comes to the different mental health issues she's had throughout Vanderpump Rules, even talking about her issues on the show, not necessarily directed to the show itself, but she's been such an advocate to speak about her mental health issues and bring awareness. And if this was kind of a service that they offered their cast members, she could have really gotten a lot of help for the mental health issues she was going through at that time. And even, you know, concurrently with everything that's been happening, this is something that should be offered to them. Part of the contracts, which we don't get to see, have things in them so that they can't go after production for things like mental health issues, let alone things that don't even protect them, period. And it is something that needs to be discussed and brought to light. And I'm glad someone's doing it.
Okay, that sounds great. And about how many people have you sort of worked with and helped to date?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We've talked to between myself and Nick Thompson, who's the other co-founder. He was a cast member on my season as well, probably a lot well more known than I am. But we've talked to probably over 200 cast members at this point, and a lot of them are just looking for a community, right? They're looking for someone to share their story. I had a cast member from one of those business entrepreneurship shows that were more popular, a couple years ago to a decade ago. He had not told people a certain story, a traumatic event, for 10 years. I was the first person he opened up to because he felt that no one else could understand. And he was so grateful just to be able to share his story with somebody who could empathize. There wasn't really anything else beyond that. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing is people just want to talk. They want to share. They want that community. But more importantly, we are also succeeding in the areas where we want to link cast members up with the mental health and legal resources that they need, not just want, but need. And we've added well over 100 therapists to our network. We interview them, we bring them on board, we make sure that they're qualified to talk to cast members. And we've also partnered with some very prominent attorneys. And to date, we've helped several people basically defend themselves from unfair allegations or lawsuits by an industry that's trying to keep everybody quiet because they don't want the dirty laundry airing. When people speak up and talk about these things, they get sued. And even if there's no basis for the lawsuit, you still have to pay a lawyer to defend yourself, right? And so the tactic there generally is to just keep people quiet because they don't have the means to defend themselves, so they'll just stop talking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that they're offering services, they're getting qualified therapists, they're helping with attorneys, and I do understand what he means, because to open your mouth when there are NDAs and contracts put in place, that's really what's holding some of these people back from saying things, that they're afraid of being sued. And to go against a huge network like NBC or ABC or Netflix, you're looking at spending a lot of money on an attorney just to defend you in hopes that you win the case, so that way those attorney's fees can then be compensated for, which usually you have to pay outright first. And depending on if they know it's a case they can win or not, like, they will then let you, take money from your winnings to pay for the attorney's fees. I dealt with that when working in a law firm, and car accidents and things like that, they would still have to pay for the lawyer up front, but if it was a good case that these lawyers knew that they could win, they would let them, keep going with the case until the case was won, and then they would take their earnings from that percentage that was awarded to the person. But I will say that is even a big issue, even with social media and people slandering and defaming people's names. You would have to spend money on an attorney to be able to go after somebody that's doing that to you. And lawyers are not cheap, period. So to be able to provide services for people that actually need it is an amazing thing. And I wonder if he helped find Rachel a lawyer. But I still think that has to do a lot with Bethany Frankel, since that's all connected with Bethany Frankel. I would say she has something to do with this foundation as well. What do you guys think?
Jeremy, let's talk about that. I'm going to interrupt, but reality's been around for a while now. Why is it that suddenly this is happening and there's a need for organizations like UKAN? Why now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you have to look at other areas in the industry or other issues that have come up that have existed for decades. And it takes a long time for some of these things to come to the forefront, right? And I'm not equating this to the Me Too movement, but it's similar in that regard, right? That abuse, that victimization had been going on for decades, right? Just because it didn't come to the forefront until recently doesn't mean it wasn't an issue for decades. And it's a similar thing here. Part of the reason is you have these very heavy-handed arbitration clauses in these contracts, and you have aggressive and assertive and powerful, well-funded production companies who they use these arbitration agreements to essentially keep any disputes private. So what an arbitration clause is basically if you have an issue with the production company, or if you have an issue with something in the contract, basically what it says is you're not allowed to file a public dispute. You have to bring it up privately, and we're gonna tell you who the arbiters are going to be, and they're going to be the ones making the decision. Whatever the decision is, whether we have to pay you money as damages or whether nothing comes of it, it remains sealed, so it never gets out in the public. And I think if you look back, you can see like little drips of this over decades, right? You'll see a little story here or there about something coming out, but you never get the details because it's always been handled in arbitration. And that's one of the things we're trying to change. And that's one of the things we're working to change, is to try to find a way to get these out of arbitration, to get cast members empowered to speak their truth and own their narrative.
And like I said, they have contracts that they signed. So that's part of the contract that they signed when going on these reality TV shows. So if they did have an issue, they would have to bring it to, the arbitrator to then have them facilitate communication between the two sides and dispute it out to then come to an agreement. But most contracts also state that the arbitration has to remain private. And that's why we, as citizens and people that watch the show, might not realize that some of these cases have happened and things get resolved. It's even like that with a regular court case. Most cases, before ever going in front of a judge, usually get disputed between the attorneys back and forth before they actually file within the court, because they can't agree on something, and then you go through years of going through a court case with a judge and the same things over that you've already arbitrated with these people over and over again. So it's very interesting that he brings that up, and I would love, like I said, one day to get a hold of one of these contracts just to see what they have signed. And maybe, like, before people go on reality TV shows, they should find an attorney to look over these contracts and find these underlying issues, so that way when they do have an issue presented in the future, they don't have a contract that's binding them to not be able to say anything. I know that's what Bethany Frankel did, and that's where this term, the Bethany Clause, came into effect, which is where she had contract provisions that required reality TV stars to give a percentage of their non-TV earnings to the network, and she had made a deal with Bravo at the time and was granted that that wasn't part of her contract, which is part of other people's contracts, and they made it so that these contracts for reality TV stars now can't add that clause in. It was a big thing. I know she talked about it on the podcast with Rachel, and I do have all of her episodes with Rachel here on my channel. So if you do want to check that out, you can check that out here on Sunshinery.
Would you say, and actually, Rachel, you can speak to this too, because I think this has affected you as well, is that to what you were just mentioning, the idea is that they're using their power, they're using their money, they're using their expertise against people they hope have none of that, right? And so the power dynamic is obviously skewed, and I feel it's that they're counting on the fact that you don't know the laws. And Rachel, you had experience in that area.
Yeah, and I feel like there's laws protecting people from being able to speak out about abusive situations in the workplace. And it just seems like they're really trying to pull a fast one on a lot of people who don't have the resources to defend themselves. And they're doing it as a way, it's a scare tactic to prevent other people from speaking out. Like I've spoken to multiple people who have experienced stuff and they're too scared to say anything about it. And I wish I could have them on my podcast, and maybe one day I will, but it's very unfortunate that people are afraid to speak out about it.
So this is actually to both of you. What do you say? Because we hear this a lot. I know, Rachel, you've heard a lot. I'm sure, Jeremy, you hear it on a day-to-day basis. Oh, poor reality stars. They signed up to be on this show. They know what they were signing up for. Why do they need help, or why should we feel sorry for them? How would you guys answer that?
I guess I do get this a lot. And on the one hand, I understand that perspective. As a viewer, you only see this tiny glimpse of what's happening. And not only that, the information that you have about the process, right? Anything outside of the show, most of that is propaganda that's been fed to you by these production companies so that they can keep their image and they can keep their squeaky clean and they can shift the blame and blame the victims, right? So I empathize and I understand with that perspective. I think there's no reason why most people would have a different perspective, but that's why UKAN is so important. That's why this conversation is so important. There's not a single cast member I have talked to that said, they like everything they were told, everything in the contract matched their experience. The mismatch is massive, right? What they tell you, what you sign up for, what you read in the contract is not even close to indicative of what actually happens. And that's one of the issues right there, is if you're not getting this full disclosure, you literally, right? And I mean that in the proper sense, you literally do not know what you're signing up for. But you also have no way of finding out because they have these very strong non-disclosure agreements. So you can't even find out from somebody else. And, I think the other aspect of that is, to viewers, it's time to believe the victims. All the cast members that are speaking up, they're all saying the exact same thing.
And I do agree with Jeremy. There's a lot of things that these networks feed us as viewers and fans that we are to believe that this network is providing what they need for these cast members. And we don't get to see the contracts to know that the contracts don't match their experience at all. I also feel like as a reality TV star, they are working, so there should be some kind of labor laws that are put into place for people on TV shows, especially reality TV and all of that. I know they have the Actors Guild and they have, the Actors Union and things like that, but these aren't actors. They're not considered actors. They're considered reality TV personalities or influencers. And there's a lot that we are learning as time goes by. And they, just as much as any normal person that has a job, need to have labor laws put into place. And even people that work a normal job are afraid to go to the labor boards when things happen because they're the little person fighting big companies. So while they're fighting for, yes, reality TV stars, they should be fighting for everybody in general that needs to have a voice when it comes to a work situation and not being able to speak or having the resources to go forward because they're afraid because of these big corporations and the money that they have, which is endless, to fight for different things that are happening within a workplace or on a TV show, regardless. So though I am for, reality stars having their own workplace labor laws and regulations and things like that, I'm more for things being done in the general world that we live in with workplace and labor laws and people feeling like they can't speak up about things happening within a corporation or what they're experiencing within their job because they're fighting a big company and they're afraid to talk about the labor conditions that they work in. I can tell you stories for days about how people are treated in their jobs that they signed up for when they went to apply for that job, and the conditions that they were led to believe would be that weren't. It's the same thing. We need to fight together, not just for these reality stars, but for everybody. And that's just how I feel. Because technically, without us fans and viewers, they wouldn't have these shows. So why can't these people that we're helping fight for their rights help fight for our rights as well? Why can't it be a communal thing?
Yeah. And in your case, it's a little bit different than my situation with Vanderpump Rules. When people hear, like, oh, cast members need more rights or there needs to be change, they become afraid that people like you want to take down reality TV and to like completely change it and it won't be entertaining anymore. What do you have to say to somebody that has that belief?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think, first of all, to put any fears to rest, we're not trying to kill reality TV. I think, it's obviously a popular form of entertainment. And, I don't personally blame anybody for enjoying reality TV. It's something that a lot of people like, and it adds positive value to people's lives to watch it. So, but I think it's important to understand we're not asking for anything special. We're not trying to demand that cast members get something special. We're asking for basic human rights. And like, I pause there because it's so critical and it's so important. So as a viewer, you have a day job, right? You're allowed to go to the bathroom when you want to. You can take a break. You can go for a walk outside if you need a little bit of sunlight, right? You're allowed to go home and get 8 hours of sleep. These are basic human. You're allowed to eat when you want. These are basic human rights. And it's a lot of things that cast members are systemically deprived of across all shows and all genres. And like even on like a Vanderpump Rules, it's a lesser degree, but there's still a lot of things that are taken away from you, from our conversations and from what you've told me. It's similar in that regard. And again, the important thing to keep in mind for viewers is we're all we're asking for is that production companies treat cast members like people. That's literally it. It doesn't seem like it should be a very high bar. And I think if anybody understands that and doesn't think that that should be the case or is offended by that, I quite honestly don't want you in our corner.
And I fully agree with him that they should have rights to having a break or being able to do what they need to do, go home, rest, all of that, just like any of us. We have issues in any job that anyone works where the labor board says this is what these workers are entitled to, and they don't always get those entitlements as well. And they are just as afraid of going and saying something or losing their job, which is their only means to making money, because of the conditions, because they're afraid that if they say something, they're gonna get fired. Now, with these competition-based shows like Love is Blind, even Love Island, things like that, I would love to know more about what they are entitled to, what kind of things that they give them as employees, not just stars of the show, but employees of the show, what kind of rules and regulations are put into place. And if they don't have set rules and regulations like any normal job should have, that, yes, is a problem. And that does need to be taken care of, as well as every other thing that is happening in this world where people, normal people like me, you, and everybody else, have to work a job where they might not be getting treated the way they should be getting treated by what the labor board says. And then being afraid to speak up. I think it's a big issue all around. It's an issue not just with reality TV stars, but it's an issue in general within at least the United States of America. Maybe we all just need one labor board that takes care of every sector of work and workplace rules, whether it's, a job at Walmart or McDonald's or a job at, NBC as a reality TV star. There should be certain rules put into place to protect our rights. And if there's one labor board that works for everybody, that would help everybody tremendously. But that's my idea. I'm a nobody. Let me start a movement that I really can't start. But I would love to see that happen.
But let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a really good point. Do you see and this is to both of you, the climate changing of the viewer? Because I feel like you see so much, what used to be really voyeuristic, we would watch and it would be a guilty pleasure, is now participatory. And I think, Rachel, you've said on past podcasts that what the fans are seeing and their emotions and the anger that is, sort of drawn, stirred up, do you feel that's impacting the end result? And maybe why people aren't feeling sorry, or not, that's not necessarily the right word, but feeling compassion towards those that are going through it. Do you think the climate has changed for the viewer towards reality?
Yeah, and I want to back up just a little bit to what Jeremy was saying, and we can tie this in. Production treating cast members as humans is not that big of an ask. And I feel like personally, I have felt like production has treated me as a human and encouraged me to speak out and share my side of the story, whatever that may be. A little manipulative at times, but still treating me like a human. The part where I have an issue in my experience from how this Scandoval rocked the nation, it was like I was no longer a human in their eyes the way that they allowed people to speak about me and pushed further these lies to excel this narrative that suited them. And I felt like I was objectified, and that was I was no longer a human, and they weren't seeing me as like, oh, there's an actual person on the receiving end of all of this hate.
Totally.
It was just like a means to an end to get ratings. All they could see was dollar signs, and it was like that. Personally, I feel like it was that greed that was the motivator and the drive, and it took priority over all else. And so that's where it hurts. That
Yeah.
hurts me because I became a character and not a human being.
That's a good point.
The thing with Rachel is that she's failing to mention that when she didn't come back for the next season, that was kind of a breach in the contract. Like, she didn't have to come back, but it's like you no longer work there. So how are they supposed to protect somebody that no longer works for them? You want them to protect you, who's not even employed by them anymore. You were also part of these people on the show's lives, that they have every right to speak about the situation and how they feel, because it was what they were going through at that point. Whether they pushed a narrative or not, they're going to put out what people were feeling about what you were doing and saying at the time, because that's what was happening. But the moment you said, I'm not coming back to the show, they had no right to protect you. You were no longer employed by them. There was no reason for them to protect you. Now, I have said, and I will say it here again, when you said that you wanted to go to a mental health facility to get mental health help, that's a tongue twister, they should have provided you with something. But like any employee with any kind of workers' comp situation, you have to go to the places that the employer approves of and is on their insurance kind of thing. And if you wanted to go to the Meadows and say the Meadows wasn't a place that they were offering you, then you would, yes, have to pay out of pocket for you choosing to go to that facility and not a facility that was part of their insurance or their contract or whatever that they had with whatever facilities that are part of their contracts. I have had plenty of friends dealing with workers' comp cases where, like, they had to go to a certain specialist because if not, then workers' comp wouldn't have covered it. It's the same kind of a situation. But I do feel like they should have provided her with something, whether she took that facility that they chose for her or not. We might never know. They could have provided her with a facility. She turned it down. We might never know that. That might be part of the contract that they can't talk about. And I hate to say it, you would think that NBC, being the head of like the network for Bravo and all of that, would have provided you with a great mental health facility if that was the case. So I guess we will never know if they provided you with anything and whether you took their offer or chose to do something else. Though I do know that the next episode is about the Meadows, so we will have to wait and see, because that will be next for you guys. And I'm going to be popping these out like boom, 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 because I have a lot of catching up to do, and we'll be catching up together. I promise that.
Well, and actually, too, to one of the other points that Jeremy made about believing the victim, it wasn't until Rachel came out with her scenario as the result of what she just described and got treatment for mental health issues and anxieties, et cetera, that then the network came out and sort of put disclaimers saying that they had mental health evidence. They didn't have that for you, correct, Rachel?
No, they didn't. No, they did not.
And now then, funnily enough, this season really focused a lot on everybody's mental health. And that was all as a result of your noise, your conversations.
Well, yeah, it's especially frustrating when we see Tom Sandoval get this like special treatment for expressing that he has dark thoughts, and none of that was extended in the same regard towards me. In fact, production was willing to go the extra mile and get my dog involved when that did not need to happen. And it's just like very gut-wrenching and disgusting to think about. And the disclaimers that we see, I feel like we should also disclaim the abuse that you see between cast members on the show and the unhealthy relationship dynamics, because all of that is being normalized on reality TV too.
Well, first off, let me just say this. It's the production's job, especially after what happened with Rachel, that they put these disclaimers up and trigger warnings at the end of episodes that if you need help or you know somebody that needs help, here's a number to call. It's called covering their ass, especially when a cast member is talking about suicidal ideations and all of that. It's not Tom Sandoval getting special treatment, because if Tom Sandoval was getting special treatment, then he would have gotten from the production company mental health help that he needed, which I don't even know if he really even sees a therapist anymore. I really haven't been paying attention to Scandoval and all of that, but we do know, like we saw during the season, he was doing different meditations and different exercises to help and different therapy practices, which is all good and dandy, but I don't think that was the show giving him those opportunities. He was the one doing those opportunities and probably the one calling and setting up the appointment and all of that. Now, something I do need to double check on, which I will go back and look. It might not be this episode, but I will update you guys on this. When Ariana was talking about the different mental health issues she was going through, I forgot what season it was, when she was talking with the girls about how she just wished she could just drive off the freeway and all of that. I do believe that they put a disclaimer at the end of that episode, if I recall correctly, which my memory is not always perfect, so I will double check that and will get back to you guys on that. But that is something that they should be doing. One, to protect their ass as a production company, and two, yes, to help other viewers that are possibly going through the same thing and knowing that there are resources out there, and here are the resources that you, as someone that watches the show, can contact if you need those resources. But then she was talking about, like, well, the cast dynamic and their friendships, all of that should, have warnings on them. You will be trigger warning every episode. I will be having to trigger warn this podcast, trigger warn everything if that was the case. Unfortunately, when it comes to situations with, like, mental health or, say, DV situations, if you don't know those initials, D violence, we'll say, or like SA, we'll say S assault, if you don't know that abbreviation, things like that. Those should always, if they're talking about it in an episode, they should always provide resources for people that are watching the show to be able to know there are resources out there for anyone that might be going through something similar. But having trigger warnings, these friendships are not always the best, but that's life sometimes. So trigger warning, these friendships might not seem the greatest. Watch out. Like, that just, I don't know. They should have had that then from episode 1 of season 1, if that was the case, because these relationships have always been so dramatic, so intense, and very emotional, and probably damaging to each other. But that's why certain people aren't certain people's friends or in certain people's lives anymore, because boundaries were put up in their real lives, and they took the steps that they needed to take to eliminate people that weren't good for them. And that's why I get mad at the fact that Lala sat there and was like, well, you should have talked to Tom at the end of the season. Like, this is all our job. she was setting her boundaries. And she made it very clear, even at the reunion the year before, that she wanted nothing to do with him. Those were the boundaries she put in place. And if production couldn't respect that, then that's on them. She was looking out for her best interest. And sometimes you gotta just do what you gotta do. And Rachel, sometimes you need to put your foot down. And if you needed something, maybe you should have put your foot down. Maybe you should have tried harder. Unfortunately, I've never worked with a production company to be able to understand that, but I understand boundaries and I understand doing what's best for yourself. And what was best for you was to not come back to the show, but then you still chose to talk about the show, even to this day, still talking about the show and everything involved. If that is something that you feel was a negative impact on your life, then you need to set boundaries and stop talking about it. Start doing better. Stop being a victim and start being a survivor. There's a big difference. And there's a big difference with you talking about the show in I survived this kind of a way instead of I'm a victim kind of a way. Disclaimer, Rachel's not going to be providing any resources in her podcast for people that might need mental health services or have issues with, different things happening in their life, but I will. So if you need any resources for anything, mental health, DV, SA, all of that will be down below in my description. There is help for anything that you personally are going through. And I can promise you that the help is out there if you need it. And you need to make that step in the right direction. And I know it's a hard step to make sometimes, but you got this, you're strong enough, and you will get through it. And those resources will help you every step of the way.
And Jeremy, what is your stance on that? Do we want to see this change in reality TV, or is it more so the production to the cast relationship?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I'm gonna back up a little bit first and just add some context that I think it's so important for viewers to understand that while reality TV, or a better term is unscripted, right? While unscripted, right, nobody's memorizing a script, it's still produced. And that's really, really important for people to understand, right? Because when they're watching you on the screen, or they're watching anybody on the screen, not only are viewers only seeing a tiny sliver of what's happening, they're seeing the angle that the producers want them to see. Right. And, it could also, and that's the best case scenario. It could even get so bad that you're just totally misrepresented in a way that never happened. And a really good example is, everybody listening to this has probably, hopefully, laughed at one point today. Right. So imagine if you're on a reality TV show and you have cameras in front of you for anywhere from like 8 to 15 hours a day. They're going to capture you laughing. Right. All they have to do is take another clip of, let's say, an off-color joke or something, an offensive joke, right? And then cut to you laughing at that joke, right? And that laugh could have happened 3 days beforehand, or maybe 3 days after. It doesn't matter. They stitch that together. They make it seem like you're laughing at that joke. And now all of a sudden, you're that person, even though that event never actually happened. And the really insidious thing is, and this is, I've read a bunch of contracts from a bunch of different shows in a bunch of different genres, and they all basically say the same thing: is we're allowed to say, production, right? We production are allowed to say anything we want. We're allowed to defame you. It says that in a lot of these contracts, and you cannot say anything to the contrary. You're not allowed to defend yourself. You're not allowed to clear the air. You're not allowed to tell your truth. And if you do, we're going to sue you. And that really irks me, because if you own anything in this life, it's your own narrative. Like, it's your own life. It's your own journey. The fact that they're taking that away from us and taking it away from people, it should infuriate people. And the fact that they threaten people with lawsuits if they do try to take that back. So I think it circles back to this notion that how you're portrayed is a produced effort that can go anywhere from like adhering somewhat close to reality to being a totally contrived situation that didn't happen. And viewers have to also understand the cast is not allowed to say the truth. They're not allowed to go against the story and the narrative, or they're going to get sued. And that's where the fear comes in. And so I think disclaimers can go a long way. And we have these disclaimers around, like based on a true story. You have a disclaimer like, hey, this is based on actual events, but has been dramatized for entertainment purposes, right? Why can't we put something like that on top of it? And why aren't we allowing cast members to say, hey, this is what they showed for entertainment, but let me tell you what actually happened, right? We allow scripted actors to do that, right? You have all sorts of actors playing villains, right? Really bad characters. Imagine if that industry forced them to take on that character as their entire life now, right? Now they're a villain, right? That's ridiculous. The fact that this industry is not allowing that same thing, I don't see how it takes away from the entertainment value. I don't see how it takes away from profitability. All it does is add some humanity and some compassion and some empathy to it, right? Why can't we do that?
I do agree with Jeremy that it wouldn't be bad to maybe put a disclaimer in there that says these are actual events that have been dramatized for entertainment purposes. That's something that definitely can be added, whether it be in the credits or in the beginning. Regardless, I think that is a great idea. I do. I will say, though, reality TV, in a sense, is kind of like what I kind of deal with on YouTube, where you don't have control over what people are producing about you and the narratives they're trying to push about you. And yet, they don't put disclaimers saying that they are taking real life clips and clipping things together to make it look a certain way, to make you look bad, because then that defeats their whole purpose. And it kind of defeats the whole purpose of reality TV and people thinking that all of these events are real. I mean, for the majority of us, we understand that a lot of what we see is real, but we also understand that production also then gets a hold of everything that they record and they produce a show for us to be entertained by. And they do things to, yes, twist up a bit to make the story more dramatic or enhanced. And I do agree that then makes it not really reality. Honestly, I wish that we could even, have YouTube do something regarding the issues that go around social media. I wish there was more people fighting for those issues that are happening. I know one thing that I've always strived here on my channel is that context is everything. And I don't like showing clips of things because you don't get the full context of the situation. And maybe it's because it's been done to me. People have clipped me and made me look like something that I'm not, just to fit a narrative they were trying to push because they didn't like me. Literally, I had that happen a couple days ago. But anyway, the point is that context is everything. And just like reality TV, here on YouTube, you will find creators that like to clip and twist stories to put in a narrative of their own to attack and humiliate people just because they don't like them. And if I could put a disclaimer on all of those videos that these people do, that would be wonderful. So maybe it's not just reality TV that we should be focusing on, but it should be everything. We have bigger issues that this country and world need to help figure out and solve. There's a lot of mental health issues because of social media. Just like there's a lot of mental health issues because of reality TV and what's happened to some of these reality TV stars. I truly believe that our country, our world, needs to be able to offer mental health services for everybody. And I get therapists need to be paid. They do a wonderful job. We don't want, like, you know, the shit of the shit. We want the best of the best. We want people that are actually going to be there to help you when you are having these issues. But something needs to be done where we can offer services for people that are in need. And these services be something that actually help them. Unlike Rachel, I could never afford going to the Meadows. I would be having to go to a state mental health facility because of my insurance. Which, yes, some state facilities are freaking incredible, but there's a lot that aren't. And maybe these state-owned facilities need to be paid more by the government to help the people that really need it. There's a lot of people that are affected by mental health issues, not only just from television shows, but from real life and real life issues. And that is something that we need to do better as a whole. And these reality stars that are on their platforms have bigger platforms and should be helping people like us as well that are in need. And that's just how I feel. I felt like when Rachel started this podcast, her whole goal was to help people that have mental health issues and give them and provide them resources and services that could open a door for them to bigger possibilities on how to get these services that they can need or want. Even just talking about certain topics that are very big within mental health. And we're not getting that from her. We are getting some, but it's mainly focused around her and her situation. And if you have not gone through the situation that she's gone through, then these services aren't really helping you. These topics aren't really helping people. The question is, what can we do to push this issue for better mental health services for everybody? That is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think about all of this? I know I've rambled now a little longer than I wanted, but what do you guys feel about this? Let me know down below.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to ask the question about something that anybody that was ever considering being on a reality show, that you might warn them, but you hit on a lot. But I'd like to ask you each to give me one thing that you would use as a warning to somebody, or something they should know about if they were considering going on a reality TV show.
It's risky. Really look at the risk versus reward. I think if you have a game plan going on a reality TV show and you're using it as a means to an end to launch some sort of business and know exactly who you are and what boundaries you have in place for yourself, and you're okay with people misunderstanding you, and you also are okay with the risk that you may be the villain, then go for it, because it's a means to an end. And if you're strong enough to do that, just, like, you would have to have thick skin and kind of know what you're getting yourself into. But if that's not the case, it's difficult because, I went into this like not having a brand or a business or a vision for anything like that. And I feel like a lot of people who do join reality shows like Vanderpump Rules anyway have that type of business mindset, and they are seeing it as a way to propel themselves into fame and to use fame as a resource. For me, I just thought it would be a good opportunity to step outside of my comfort zone and develop my speaking skills and like overcome social anxiety and have a little fun and get paid for living my life. And I truly thought it was real. And through time, I've experienced different types of things that show me that it's not quite that. It also puts you in a vulnerable position with a show like Real Housewives or Vanderpump Rules with a recurring cast. You're creating relationships with these people, and your life becomes completely enmeshed with the storylines and what is happening and being presented to the rest of the world. So it's very confusing, and it allows for yourself to be more vulnerable to manipulation, and that is producer's middle name.
First off, she asked for one thing, not 20 things, Rachel. Second off, you did not join the show to help with your social speaking skills and your social anxiety and all of that. You knew exactly what would happen if you joined the show. You were hoping that the show would help, yes, with your pageant career that you thought you were going to have. And she sits there and acts like she didn't chase James Kennedy down. She's already admitted to this. Not recently, but when she first started, she admitted that she was following and going to his shows and trying to meet him because she wanted to be on the show. This is the bullshit from Rachel that I just don't like. She knew that she would get some kind of fame from being on the show, and maybe at the time she didn't know what she wanted to do with her life, but she was doing pageants, so I do know that she was probably hoping that it would help her there, but she also probably thought it would help her elsewhere in whatever fame direction she wanted to go in. And yes, the people that did start in season 1 of Vanderpump all worked at the restaurant, but they all admitted that their goals in life was to do like acting and movies and shows and yada yada yada. So if they did have a bigger plan why they joined the show to maybe help propel that, well, look at where they are now. I guess my one thing I would tell people, because I'm only going to give one, is have a lawyer read through that contract, and if you cannot take anything that that contract says and have them rework it for you, then don't do it. Especially if that contract is not in your favor. I will say though, if you are looking to start a YouTube career, a YouTube channel, just know, regardless of what you do, whether it be this or crafts or vlogging or drama channel or crime channels, just know no matter what you do, you need to have thick skin, because no matter what you do, there will always be someone out there that is jealous of what you do and will try to take you down to get a step ahead, especially if they're in the same genre as you, or they're looking to get your viewers to their channel. Just like reality TV, you do need a thick skin. Any type of social media influencers or anything where you want to put your life out there, even if it's just talking about a TV show, you really do need thick skin, because people are cruel. And I wish that I could say there are more kind people than cruel, because I know that I would do anything for anyone. But there are more cruel people than there are kind. And I've had to learn the hard way, especially with YouTube. I'm kind of curious, though, what's Jeremy's one piece of advice that he would give?
You know what that just made me think of, and tied with what you just said, Rachel, and what Jeremy alluded to a little bit earlier. The rest of the world, look at athletics. Look at NIL deals, name, image, likeness. They're giving them back to the athletes, right? So all the big organizations are giving the power to the athletes. This is one of those industries that's still holding, like to your point, they own it. And Rachel, you and I have all of us have a mutual reality star friend who was talking about she'd been off the shows for like 10 years and she went to Australia and her face was on the billboards. Like when you sign those agreements, they're owning that. And to your point, Jeremy, your life and your journey should be the one thing you are guaranteed to own. But once you sign those contracts, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and again, whether that's legal or not is not, a conversation I can have, but I don't think it's ethical.
Right.
I don't think it's right. And to answer your question, I have a caution and then advice for anyone considering reality TV. And this spins off of what Rachel was saying, is producers are not your friend. They are there because you fit a certain character archetype and a storyline, and they're there to produce your storyline. Their motivation is ratings and profit. right? It might work out that they can be totally friendly and nice to you while that happens, right? That could be a happy coincidence. But the bottom line is they are not your friend. And what makes that even worse is their job is to make it seem like they're your best friend. So you tell them all their secrets so they know all of your buttons and so that they can have the easiest job that they have to push you in the storyline in the direction that they want you to go, right? So my caution is like never confuse the friendliness of a producer with actual friendship. Understand the dynamics, understand their incentives. And I'm not saying they're bad people, right? There probably are some bad producers, but really they're operating within a system that incentivizes them in a certain way. And so understand the incentives, understand that they're not incentivized to be your friend. They're incentivized to produce you based upon a storyline that was often predetermined for you. And so that's an important caution. And, to sort of give you the flip side of that coin, my advice would be find other cast members to reach out to, ideally like on a previous season from the same show, or really any cast member from any show is going to be able to give you good advice. And that's one of the reasons that UKAN exists, is we're trying to facilitate that communication.
And that's where that whole Bethany clause came into play, because they're signing these contracts, and in these contracts it states clearly that whether you do something outside of the show, they own a percentage of whatever you do. So you are signing that even if you are not doing the show anymore, but you go and do like another show or a movie, and there's advertisements for all of that, they get a percentage. That is something that I can rally behind Bethany Frankel about. Like, the fact that she saw that in the contract and she had it rewritten, and then when they figured out what was going on, they made sure that nobody could ever take that out of the contract again. But I do agree with him. Like, that is your life. That is you. You are, in the sense, advertising yourself. You are an influencer. If you're getting sponsorships from other companies, if you do other shows, if you want to be on other shows, you should be able to control all of that profit that you have worked hard for yourself. That's like me signing a contract with like a company that I work for, and it says that if I leave and I do similar work, that they get a percentage of my paycheck. Hell to the fucking no. And this is really, 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 really why I just want to get my hands on a contract so bad. Especially Vanderpump. I would love to get my hands on one of those Vanderpump contracts. But as a fellow creator and influencer on, well, social media, I would advise anybody that before you sign any contract, have an attorney look over it. And if in that contract it says that anything you do afterwards, a percentage, needs to go to them, it's not worth it. You are yourself. And if you are doing influencing, where you are influencing others by what you do, and you're posting that elsewhere and you're getting gigs elsewhere, you should be able to enjoy everything that you've earned without having to give to somebody else that literally did nothing but maybe, had you on a show for a couple of years. What do you guys think about that? Let me know down below. I'm very interested to see what you guys have to say about that.
So I have a question for both of you. Has your personal experience tainted the way that you watch reality TV as a whole? And can you even, or do you even watch any reality TV?
I watched Love on the Spectrum, and I like that show because, I don't know, it's just very sweet and innocent, and it just seems like, these people who are on the autism spectrum are navigating a dating world, and you wouldn't really experience that unless you had like a sibling or a family member who you can kind of like know that type of information, but I just find it very endearing. But to answer your question, no, I don't love watching reality TV shows. I did watch during the pandemic. And I guess when people are talking about a reality TV show so much, it's kind of like, this is what everyone's talking about. Like, I need to be in the know so I know what these conversations are. So I could see how like everyone got on the bandwagon on watching Vanderpump Rules that season 10. But yeah, it definitely has tainted the way I view reality TV. I can normally tell with the audio if something had been inserted as a wild line into a scene, and I question like, oh, did that person really make that facial movement when they're showing that? Like I question everything, and so I don't know. I just don't see it as real. So I take everything with a grain of salt when I watch that, and I hardly watch it because
That makes sense.
a lot of them are toxic too. Like I'm watching The Valley, just so I can be in the know with that. And I have a friend on there, and it's a lot. It's heavy, and I don't know if I want to spend my time consuming that kind of stuff.
I'm wondering, which friend is she talking about that she has on the Valley? Very interesting. Who do you guys think it is? That's what I want to know. Who do you guys think it is? Let me know down below. That is a friend of Rachel's still that's on the Valley. But I do want to say, even with everything that I've learned, everything I've already knew about reality TV, I don't look at it in a different light. I just know that there are producers that are going to twist things to make things look a certain way. And I do pick up on little audio clicks and stuff like that as well. I feel like because I do this so much with you guys that I could tell when I do it on my end and how it doesn't flow properly and things like that. My other question is, though, I wonder if she's watching Love is Blind, because a lot of people are talking about that show, and if she wants to be in the know about what everyone's talking about, she is definitely watching Love is Blind. How many of you think that? Let me know that too down below. I'm literally sitting here thinking about which person on the Valley is Rachel friends with as I'm trying to ponder everyone that's on the Valley. Like, it's not Kristen. It's definitely not Janet. It's got to be one of the guys. She hates Jax Taylor, so it's definitely not him. I don't think it's Jason. Who do you guys think it is?
Yeah. It's so interesting what you're talking about with like trying to pick out the different scenes of like, was that plate fuller in the scene after? Like, what about that glass of water? Like, is that higher now? Like, I think to a lot of people that might sound like paranoia, but to people who have gone through that experience, it's not. It's the truth. Like, so you start to become really sensitive to finding those things. And it's this really interesting point. Me personally, I didn't really watch reality TV before. It's changed my perception quite a bit, obviously, in terms of like how it's produced, the ethical implications of it. And so I don't really watch it much either. Again, it's not really a difference or a change from prior to the show. I think it's just my understanding of how it's produced has changed my perspective on like reality TV in general. And again, going back to what you said about watching Love on the Spectrum, Rachel, I think you clearly, it's an enjoyable show. Like there's some purity and some innocence there, right? And again, I think back to one of the first points, we're not trying to get rid of reality TV. There's good entertainment, there's good shows out there, but imagine if you can watch these shows and just feel confident knowing they were produced ethically and the cast were taken care of. You can't right now. That's the problem. Imagine if you could watch one of these shows, any of these shows, and know for a fact, hey, like I'm just watching the on-screen drama. Like people are going to be people. You don't need to deprive them of sleep for them to get dramatic. You don't need to create fake scenarios with frankenbiting and cuts from different days in a single conversation to create the drama. People aren't freaking dramatic. Let that drama shine through.
Yeah, human behavior is the part that is so fascinating with unscripted TV. It's like we're getting a peek into someone else's life that lives completely different than maybe we do, and we're like, oh, I wonder what it's like to walk in their shoes. And it's just interesting, people living, and it doesn't need to be something so like more than that and twisted and so manipulative, and it messes with your mind. I swear, like every single cast member on Vanderpump Rules has there's a little bit of a screw loose for all of us, because when you're on a recurring cast, you start to have this feeling like, okay, I'm not in control of my own narrative. So what am I going to do to take back some of my control? You start self-producing. And then that's also when fans are reacting now to like, why are the cast self-producing? This is not like what we want to see. It's not authentic. And it's hard though, because it's like you self-produce because you want to take back your control on your own image and your narrative. And it's just this loop cycle.
I will say there is a lot of great reality TV shows that are enjoyable and entertaining. Born This Way, that used to be on TLC, I believe it was. That was something I loved. And it was pure innocence and how these adults with Down syndrome live their lives or living into their adult lives. And I am sad that they took that off the air. I love watching like Outdaughtered and just seeing the girls grow up. Oh my God, they're so big and it's so innocent and sweet and fun. But I have to also say that everybody knows, even here on this platform, drama sells. And when you have drama in reality TV, you are going to have higher numbers and higher ratings and things like that. So, of course, you're going to have these shows that are going to promote drama or have like competition shows that are clearly going to promote drama, like Traders, even though I love that show. Because drama sells. We all love to watch a good dumpster fire. But we also need to embrace it in the sense that nobody is perfect, not even these people on reality TV. And when we see things like that, we can relate to some of the drama that these people are having in their lives because nobody is perfect. And we might be experiencing similar drama in our lives that we can relate to it. I want to know, what is one TV show that you enjoy that might have little drama here and there, but it's more for enjoyment and entertainment value than actually for the drama aspect? I want to know. Let me know down below, guys.
So recently, a network came out speaking to the fans, actually, reminding them that the contestants or the reality stars are having an experience and to be kind. Do you think that's a tiny hint of change on behalf of the networks towards this scenario, or what do you think about that?
I think it's a signal that the narrative is changing, right? Because it's a reaction. They didn't do this on their own. Like that's the first kind of flag that we should look at. It took pressure for them to do something that should have been happening all along, right? But I personally worry about corporate whitewashing, which is where you create a image of change or an image of improvement to satisfy the outcry without actually doing anything about it. And like, I don't know this particular studio that put out this statement, but it's very possible and very likely that this same studio, their social media team, is actively promoting the events, the narratives, the structures, the vitriol against cast members, right? So it really seems like that's kind of it's disingenuous, because on the one hand they're saying, oh, please be kind, but on the other hand they're like, oh, well, this person's the villain, you should hate them, right? And that's a bit of an exaggeration, but these massive social media teams do fuel that. And until they stop fueling that, that's not real change. You're just covering it up. And I think the second point I want to make is you can't let them police themselves. And again, it all comes down to incentives. And we're a capitalist society. If we want to talk about late stage capitalism, that's a whole different podcast. But the point is, the only incentive right now is profit maximization and maximizing shareholder value. There's a law in the books that says you have to maximize shareholder value, right? You can literally go to jail if you don't in extreme cases. So like, you have to look at the incentives, and you have to realize that under this system, under these incentives, the companies policing themselves like this, it doesn't work, because there's no incentive to actually enforce it. So what we need is a third party who is not affiliated, is not paid for by the company, to ensure that these things are actually happening and these changes are actually being made. I would caution, and I would ask everybody to question any sort of change that is self-policing.
I can agree with Jeremy on that, getting a third party involved. So that way, that third party is in control to make sure the production company is doing what they need to do, as well as the cast is getting the support that they need. It would be like a union, where if you have ever worked for a union job, you have the union that is like the third party. You have the workers and you have the company, and then the union steps in where they need to make sure the workers are getting the things that they needed and the pay that they are supposed to be getting paid, all of that. Maybe there does need to be a union, just like the actors have a union, for reality stars and even influencers. I also think there needs to be more of that within our world, us humans, that live in the everyday world that aren't reality stars, things that are put into place as well. I know we have like labor boards and labor laws where you can go to the labor boards, but people are scared to do that. This is the same thing that we talked about previous. And if you're not in a union-based job, you don't have assurance as well. And that's a big thing. And I think we need more maybe unions or third-party companies that are out there to protect workers in general. And being that there are more people that are making money off of social media and making this their job, there definitely needs to be something put in place with that as well. Even though I understand that we're considered independent contractors and all of that, there still needs to be something put into place, especially like with YouTube, for example. I'm considered an independent contractor. I put my videos on YouTube. But when I look for YouTube for help, i.e. someone doxing my complete information, they're not there to help. But yet, I'm doing everything I can to make them money as well. But yet, they are not helping their creators when the creators are in need.
That's a really good point. Rachel, I would think that that really resonates with you too, because, in your show, everybody on that show had affairs and had whatevers, and none of it got to the point that your situation did. And once the genie was out of the bottle, so to speak, the pot was stirred through the social media banter and the direction on the media. Would you agree with that, Rachel?
Yeah. I mean, as Jeremy was speaking, it kind of flashed me back to last summer when Lisa supposedly went on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen and was telling people that, remember, these are people, these are real lives that we're talking about. And it was major, major damage control, because my publicist was in contact with them specifically saying, like, hey, you guys, you need to like reel it in, because this girl, this young woman, has been traumatically affected by all of this hate, that she's put herself in a mental health facility, and it's like an actual facility. And now you're saying that it's not, it's just like a spa vacation that she's on, to like implement more of that hatred. And and I think the goal too, production wise, their strategy is to share all of the different stories, right, for the most part, because different people will connect to different characters on the show, and then that gets more people to comment and defend their side and what they believe. And the more commentary, the better the ratings and the higher prices that they can sell advertisement space for. And that's the whole game.
Like the documentary where they were talking about the negative comments creates more dopamine than the positive serotonin, right? So then everybody goes down that rabbit hole. That's exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah. That documentary is called 15 Minutes of Shame, and it's directed by Monica Lewinsky. You guys should definitely check it out.
Firstly, you need to blame Scandoval for saying that you were in a spa, because the way he made it seem was that you both were at a spa together in Arizona. And then when it was confirmed that you were at a mental health facility, yes, then things were corrected. But the network is not in control of the articles being written by different bloggers and different companies. And yes, they have some control over the cast members, but they cannot control what they say on their podcast, only what, like, they can talk about the show per se. So how is one network supposed to reel in social media where people are talking about it that have no connections with the network? Because for me, it wasn't the network that I saw promoting that you were at a spa. It was the articles. It was different things that different cast members were saying, i.e. Tom Sandoval. A lot of assumptions were being made because of it. So yes, there was a lot of hearsay. But once people found out where you were, they stopped saying you were at a spa. Though I will say, the Meadows looks very nice. And if you have the money to afford to go to something like that, that's wonderful. But a lot of people, like average Joes, cannot afford to go to the Meadows. And when they go to seek mental health help, goddamn tongue twister, they aren't gonna have the same amenities that you had while you were at the Meadows. So reality, you were kind of at like a spa mental health facility that we all wish we could dream of going to get the help that we need. I'll tell you this, I wish I could have gone to the Meadows when I got the help that I needed for my mental health. But I did have an amazing therapist who has since passed away that I give so much credit to because he really, really helped me when I was down at my worst. And without him, I wouldn't be here today. And I cannot thank him enough for all that he has done. And if he was still here today, I would still be going to him only. Though my therapist did used to work at his office, and that was a connection that I later made after the fact. I had found a new therapist, and when I was telling her where I used to go, she was like, oh, someone in my practice actually worked with him, and that's how I got connected with my therapist that I have now. And one more quick point. Yes, other people on the show cheated and had, their flings and whatnot. But nobody on the show previous had an affair for 7 months with anybody behind people's backs and was getting cheated on for that fucking long. It blew up the way it did because how severe of what you did was. Am I making sense, like, with this? Is it, like, I get, like, there were other people that had cheated, but nothing compares to the magnitude between you and Sandoval compared to everybody else and what they did.
What you mentioned about them trying to warp the narrative around where you went, like a spa, that's again another example of them trying to own your story, your life story. They're trying to own that. Why? Because if you really do, you did, but like if they admit that you checked into a legitimate like mental health retreat where you like turned off your phone and it was like super serious, that looks really, really bad for them, right? Really bad. And not only that, if they can spin it as you going to this like, oh, this hootie tootie spa thing, right? I'm just getting manicures and stuff, and like, we're calling it mental health, but it's really not, whatever. If they can spin it like that, that also like fuels the narrative they're trying to create for you. Like spoiled, out of touch, like all of these things, right? And again, that's another one of the problems. They're even bringing in stuff that they should have no control over to try to warp and change how you're perceived. And if they really cared about you, if they really cared about cast mental health, they wouldn't do that.
And that is it. That is it. That is the thing. Because if they did support me in the way that every single human being deserves to be supportive, maybe there would have been a world where I would have gone back to the show.
100%.
Maybe I would have felt supported enough to go back and been like, hey, this is my story. I can own that. And I want to share that with other people because I truly do believe that representing that piece and like being the other woman is a shameful thing, but it's a thing that happens. And if you can own that and share that and like, and be that for somebody else to relate to on their television screen, that's everything that I want.
Right.
But I didn't feel supported in the way that I deserve to be supported. And there is no way in hell I was going to go back to that knowing that they don't care.
Yeah.
No, and actually to take that a step further, we presented them with an opportunity to look like the leaders in mental health. For when Rachel came out, to be able to shed light on the stigmatization of mental health and treatment for mental health. And we wanted to be able to share that journey with the network, and they would have looked like heroes being the forefront of that. And I, honest to goodness, don't think it would have impacted what they did the next day going back to film, but they still would have had this really positive, but they weren't interested in that because that's where money is, I guess.
And Rachel, what I've always admired about you and the conversations you're having is you've owned up to the mistakes, right? Like, it's not like you're trying to say, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, you're human. We all make mistakes, right? And you're taking responsibility for that. And I think that just adds to the credibility of your message, right? You're not trying to run or hide from things. What you're trying to do is you're trying to present them in an empathetic light, in a realistic light, and in a way that can help people going forward. And I think that, it's so frustrating that the network didn't want to partner with you in doing that, because Juliet, to your point, like the one of the messages I keep trying to convey as overtly as possible whenever I get the platform is this change is coming, right? This is a disruption in the industry. It's not going to stop. It might take a while, but it's not going to stop. And if you look at the history of disruptions and successes and who survives disruptions and who doesn't, it's the companies that embrace the disruption and decide to become part of the conversation and have a partnership in helping to frame and create the next stage, right? If you look at Harvard Business Review, like hundreds of Harvard Business Review cases over decades are littered with situations where an industry fought disruption and they died, right? So like, I would love it if one of these studios, one of these companies reached out to us and say, hey, we know we need to change. We would like to work with you and partner with you in bringing about that change, because it's, UKAN is never about opposition. The fastest way to change is to partner with the industry. I would love nothing more than for one of these people to say, hey, we would love to partner with UKAN to make this a better industry, right? That would be a dream come true.
Show me where they ever made it seem like you were at a spa. These were not the production company making it seem like you were at a spa. If anything, they were not giving any comments because they had no idea. Or if they did, they didn't want to comment on it. And that's their right. And I bet she did go to production and say, hey, listen, if I come back, I want to tell my story about my mental health journey, but I want to be paid top dollar like all the rest of them. And listen, we will never know the truth. There's always two sides to every story. Rachel's, the production company, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. So I can see, yes, like I said, her saying, I want my story to be like, yes, I made a mistake, I went and got help, and blah, 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 blah. But I also want to be paid the same amount as everybody else that have been there longer than I have. And that's where maybe the issue lied. Because we heard from them that she wasn't coming back because she wasn't getting paid the same amount as Tom and Ariana, who have been on there since literally season 1. So I'm meeting somewhere in the middle, and I believe that is probably more likely what happened. Though it is an assumption, and my opinion, I can see that being the issue. And I do hope that Bravo embraces more change when it comes to mental health and wanting to help cast members that have issues that need mental health help. I hate that tongue twister. But I really do. I really wish them to go on this journey to help people that are in need, especially the people that have been there through thick or thin for their shows that actually need help. I don't know, guys. What do you think about everything she just said? She would have gone back if they advocated more for her. Do you honestly believe that was really the issue? Or do you believe it was kind of like I was saying? Or what is your theory? Let me know your theories. I'd love to hear your theories. And I hate to say it, Jeremy, you really don't know anything about the show. You've admitted that you don't watch reality TV. So you really don't know the situation of what happened. So I'm giving you a little grace right now. And that's all I'm going to say about that. You're only being told what she's told you so far. Just remember that, Jeremy.
So on that note, which was very positive, Jeremy, I think you have some other positive news to share with Rachel.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while, Rachel. And I think, again, I've admired your message and your platform ever since you started talking about it. But we would love it if you would partner with UKAN and bring UKAN's message to your platform and really just share the spirit of trying to get cast members just the basic of human rights, representate like mental health, all of these things, right? We're aligned in this mission. And I would love it so much if you would join UKAN as a cast ambassador.
I would be honored too. Yeah, that is awesome. And I want to ask for cast members, future cast members, past cast members that are listening and want to reach out and get help. Like, how do they go about contacting the UCAN Foundation and what can they expect resource wise?
Yeah. That's a great question. So you can DM us on our Instagram, the_UCAN_foundation. If you just type it in, you'll find it. So you can DM us there. You can email me directly. My email is jeremy@ucanfoundation.org. You can go to our website, ucanfoundation.org, submit a form there. But the bottom line is, like, we want to help you. We want to reach out to you. We want to talk to you. I will personally talk to you. Just reach out to us through one of these channels and you get a conversation with me. Hopefully, Rachel, you'll be involved in some of these as well. And again, we have partners in the mental health space. We have partners in the legal space. So if you have issues, if you have something that you're not quite sure how to resolve, we can help you with that. And the other thing we're doing is we're on the very front end of this, but we're trying to build an entire, we'll call it a curriculum, right? So like, how do you succeed in reality TV from cradle to grave? From the moment you think you want to be on reality TV to you finished filming and you want to brand yourself, you want to be social media successful, like, what are the lessons? What are the things that we can give you to empower you to do that while also protecting your legal rights and giving you the information you need to leave it in the best mental state that you can, right? So again, we're a brand new nonprofit. It's been just a bit over a year. We're still trying to find our footing. But again, we just want to build this community. And I would love it if you're a cast member, if you're thinking about becoming a cast member, talk to us.
That's awesome.
And like you said, change is coming and people are talking about mental health. And it's so refreshing to know that people care about this and like in the entertainment industry, especially. And people even watch old shows like America's Next Top Model and Jersey Shore, and they're just like appalled on some of the things that were normalized back then. So we have shifted as a society and a culture and, or I should say, we have shifted as a society and the mental health culture has become more in the forefront. So it's only a matter of time before we will see some sort of change. But it's incredible having the UCAN Foundation be in the forefront of that for unscripted TV. And when I was in the Meadows dealing with all of this stuff and really like reconnecting with myself and praying for my future. I came out of the Meadows and one of my friends that I met in there sent me a clip. It was Nick Thompson talking about his experience. And there was like a clip of you, Jeremy, speaking on the situation and this UCAN Foundation. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this didn't exist before I went into the Meadows. Like, this is so cool that it's very much in alignment with the times. And I'm just very grateful to have been able to connect with you guys and to have been able to get the resources that I needed to speak freely about my experience. Because if I didn't have that, my life could have looked completely different. And I just feel like having a voice is so important. And it's something that I've worked my whole life to find. So I thank you guys for helping me be able to speak on my experience.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you're part of UKAN. I think we're so mission aligned, and that hit home so much when I was out in California and we were just chatting and talking. I think we're of this mind that just because we went through an experience doesn't mean other people should. Like, our bad experience can be leveraged to make the world a better place. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do here.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you guys for listening and tuning in. And I hope you learned something new today, or maybe your perspective has shifted a little bit, or if you need some resources, hopefully we helped you out and could direct you into a place that's useful for you. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Rachel.
Well, congratulations, Rachel, on becoming a partner with UKAN. I do hope, Jeremy, though, that as a CEO, I believe, or the founder of this organization, that you really help her learn what the message is that you're trying to instill, put her through some training on how to be able to help others, because for me, I feel like this is still so very new to her. She's just finding herself. She's just learning more about what she wants to do with her platform. She still has a lot of growth to go, in my opinion. And you can't just throw somebody that's had experience on a show to be a partner without giving them some kind of background to what you expect from them as a partner, and help train them to be able to help others that are in need. Now, you gave resources for people that have been on reality TV with this UKAN partnership and promoting that. But what about all us smaller people? All us smaller influencers that aren't on TV shows, that are only on YouTube or on Twitch or on TikTok or Instagram? There's a lot of mental health issues that go along with being on social media. I will never probably be on a reality TV show, so technically that means that cannot help me if I went to seek help from you guys. So what about us? What about us fans? What about us normal people? What about us people that are giving you the views, the subscribers, the watch hours, the listening hours, all of that for your platforms? What can you guys do to help us? What resources are there for just regular old Joe Schmoes like me? Well, I know that I'm not really anyone important, but I do know that there is a lot of resources out there for people that need help with mental health. And what I can do is at least provide those resources for you guys down below for many different issues that you might have going on in your life. Whether it's substance abuse, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's mental health, whether it's having issues as a child where you were SA'd and you need help now, learning the path that you need to take to get over that trauma. What about these men and women that go off to war, that come back with PTSD? What resources are available for these people? The least that I can do is provide that for you guys. And even if it touches one person, that's one person that was helped. And that is what matters to me. Now, I did not start my platform to be a mental health advocate or anything like that, but I am somebody that has suffered with anxiety and depression and have had mental health issues my entire life, that when I get overly stressed, I could then have a seizure because I am epileptic, and that is a big trigger to my seizures. And I have been a victim of domestic violence, not with the man that I'm with. You know, you got to point that out for the people in the back. I have been a victim of sexual assault, not with the man I'm with. Got to say that again for the people in the back. And I have had my own trauma that I have been through. And I have had to navigate it myself. So the least that I can do is provide resources for people that might not know where to go. And also tell you guys that if any one of you ever need anything, please do not be afraid to email me, DM me on any of the platforms that I have in my description, and reach out. So I'm telling you as a friend and as the creator of this channel that if any one of you need just anyone just to even talk to, I am available and I am here. I am not somebody that thinks of myself as some big YouTuber, because I'm not. I am just like all of you. I'm imperfect. I've had to learn from my mistakes. I've had to learn how to deal with my own trauma. I've had to get therapy. I continue to get therapy. And I continue each day to try to better myself whichever way I possibly can. So please, again, do not be afraid to reach out to me. Even if it's to ask for resources for something, I will be happy to do everything I can for you. And on that note, I do wish that you all have a wonderful day. And remember, do not let anyone dull your shine. Shine bright and let that sunshine come out. I hope you all have a wonderful, fantastic day. And we'll be back again here soon. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell to turn on your notifications so you can get notified every time I post a video or go live, which I will be starting to go live, so please look out for those notifications. Bye, everyone.
I've been stuck on a memory, but it's not like I need it. And we may have some history, but we don't have to repeat it. You made this mess and left me with